Our scripture this morning comes from the 25th chapter of Matthew, verses 1 through 13. It is one of three parables that are part of what is known as Jesus' farewell discourse, which is to say, these were parables he told very near to his betrayal, arrest, and execution. Listen now to the parable that is often referred to as the parable of the 10 bridesmaids. The kingdom of heaven will be like this. 10 bridesmaids took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a shout, "Look, here is the bridegroom. Come out to meet him." Then all the bridesmaids got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise replied, "No, there will not be enough for you and for us. You better go to the dealers and buy some more for yourselves." And while they went to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went with him into the wedding banquet. And the door was shut. Later, the other bridesmaids came along, saying, "Lord, open to us." But he replied, "Truly, I tell you, I do not know you. Keep awake, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour." Precious Lord, take my hand. Lead me on, help me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. I have to tell you, working with our text this week has made me rewrite what I wanted to say more than once. Jesus told a story about 10 bridesmaids who had to wait longer than anyone expected for the groom to show up. So long that they all fell asleep. And when they awoke, or when they were woken up, only half of them were prepared for what came next. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. As this week has worn on, I've begun to feel more and more like one of the bridesmaids who didn't have enough oil to last the night or go to the wedding. I was not prepared for what has been happening and for the deep divisions that define us as a nation, not to mention COVID-19. Actually, I think if we put ourselves in a contemporary telling of this parable, all of the bridesmaids would come up lacking. None of us is prepared for this. Nor are we prepared for the days ahead, the years ahead, of trying to figure out how to live faithfully and compassionately, how to live together in such an angry and divided world. Jesus told this parable to his disciples along with 2 others while their world was crashing in around them. All 3 stories speak to how we deal with an unscripted life, if you will, how we respond to what life throws our way. The chapters that follow these parables show how Jesus responded to betrayal, false arrest, torture, and execution, and how his disciples responded to disappointment, disillusionment, and uncertainty. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me home. All the world's a stage, Shakespeare wrote, and all the men and women only players. I love the metaphor of life being like a play, except that it might lead us to believe that life has some sort of script that we can follow. In his song, Beautiful Boy, John Lennon sings, "Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans," which is another way to say that our lives are not scripted. Somewhere, probably tucked inside a book I read long ago, I have a greeting card with a quote that reads, "The story of my life has a wonderful cast of characters. I'm just not sure about the plot." Rather than a set drama, life is improvisational theater. We make it up as we live, which means we have to try and prepare for things we can't see coming. And what matters most are the people with whom we share the scene, the other characters. All of us make up that cast of characters, the supporting actors in this drama of life. One of my favorite improv actors is Wayne Brady. Many years ago, I saw him in concert, as it were, and before he came on stage, one of his associates stepped out with a big flip chart and asked the audience to give him words. And we began to shout out random vocabulary, and he wrote the words down, one per page, flipping to the next page until he had about 40 words written down. Then he introduced Wayne, who walked out to this hip-hop beat, which I won't do right now, and then began rapping using the words we had given him. Each time he used a word, his assistant flipped the page. Brady never missed a beat or a word or a rhyme. He demonstrated that improv is more than just making things up. Good improv is preparing to be able to respond to whatever one is offered by those around them. How we respond to our current situation will reveal how we have prepared, both individually and collectively. Are we prepared to be peacemakers, or have we prepared by being one of those who brings gasoline to fight a fire? Are we committed to the long haul of building meaningful community, or have we prepared to sequester ourselves to make sure we get what's ours and then leave others to their own devices? Have we fostered courage in our hearts, or have we fed our fears? Have we prepared with ourselves at the center of the story, or as one of the cast of supporting characters? And now, I'm not saying it's wrong to feel afraid or anxious. These are uncertain times, and both fear and anxiety are appropriate responses. But in the story that follows the parable of the bridesmaid, Jesus talked about a rich man who was going on a trip, and he gave 3 servants money to invest or use while he was gone. 2 of the servants had ideas for what to do with the money. They had prepared. They were ready to say yes, and they had ideas. The third was so frightened of his boss or of failing that all he was prepared to do was to dig a hole and bury the money so he could return it intact when his boss came back. When the master returned, he chastised the man for being captured by his fears. Then Jesus told a third story that was set at the final judgment, when the nations will be divided into the sheep on the right hand and the goats on the left. The sheep are congratulated for responding to the needs around them. Jesus says, "I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was lonely and you included me." The goats are chastised for not doing those things. But both groups ask, "When did we see you hungry or thirsty or lonely?" And Jesus answered, "When you met the need in front of your face, when you met the need in the face in front of you, you met me." Here's the thing I keep coming back to. Neither the sheep nor the goats truly grasped the impact of their behaviors. They all asked, "When did we see you?" They didn't know. The difference between the two is the sheep had prepared to notice their fellow characters, their fellow actors who were in need. They had prepared to be able to respond with food and drink, with clothing and companionship. They saw themselves as supporting actors, as characters in a cast. The goats didn't. I was in Harvard Square one day back when we lived in Boston and passed a man on the street who was holding a paper cup, and he asked me for spare change. I learned from Ginger, my wife, not to give money to those who ask, but to offer food. So I said, "I'm happy to buy you a muffin and a cup of coffee," and pointed to the nearby coffee shop, where in Harvard Square there's one about every 10 feet. He thought for a second, and he said, "A Coke and a brownie?" I thought, hey, why not? So I went into the bakery, and the brownies looked so good that I got 2 of them and came back out, gave him his brownie and Coke, and then we sat on the curb together, ate our baked goods, and talked. I love telling that story. And I am also haunted by it because I wish I could say it had happened more than once. That day, I was prepared to support my fellow actor, my fellow character in the story of our lives. I wonder how many scenes, though, I have walked by without catching my cue to offer support, without seeing Christ in the eyes of the person looking back at me. As Jesus said, when you meet the need in the face in front of you, you meet me. Sometimes I miss that. I recorded this sermon on Saturday, which followed 4 days in which we set daily records for the number of new COVID cases in our country. Some states are still counting votes, even though just a couple hours ago, before I recorded, many news organizations declared Joe Biden and Kamala Harris the winners. Many folks are worried about how their businesses will survive both the virus and the winter. We are all malnourished in our hunger for human contact and community. And like the old gospel song says that I sang earlier, we are tired, we are weak, we are worn. All of us are hungry and thirsty and hoping for a place to belong, and hoping that our fellow characters will notice our need. Jesus' parable about the bridesmaids has a troubling conclusion. The 5 who didn't have enough oil went to find some, which meant the wedding was in full swing when they finally got there, but no one would let them in. How could they have had the wedding without the bridesmaids? How, too, then, can we grasp God's beloved community unless we prepare to include everyone, to include all of the characters in the story of our lives? Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me home. When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my light It's almost gone. Hear my cry, hear my call. Hold my hand lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I'm weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home.